Hi, I'm Darlene Washington from RazzmatazzTV.com, and this is Spiritually Intriguing, the Church Edition. Today we're with Pastor Marcus L. Tabb of Hyde Park AME Church. Pastor Tabb.
Good to see you again, Darlene.
All right. We're going to be discussing a number of issues that are taking place in the secular community with Pastor Tabb. But at the moment, we first want to learn all about his pastoral journey. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, God has always had a hand on me. Growing up, my family didn't go to church, but my best friend, who was still my best friend and a pastor, father was a pastor, so I would visit church with his family, and we did go to church. My mother made us go to church early on until we got old enough to make a decision to keep going or not go. So I chose to keep going with my friend, and when I went on to college, my first college roommate, father was a pastor. So we would share stories spiritually, and after I got out of college, when I met my wife, I kind of got away from the church for a little while. I met my wife whose grandfather was an AME bishop. Okay. So I'll say that God had his hand on me, but when
I'd say so.
When
watching you for sure. Want that one.
So when I joined the AME church, I did everything that I could. I ran for ministry as much as I could. I was a trustee, a steward, was on every board, every auxiliary, started a few ministries, and finally I answered my call to ministry. Since then, I became part of the Center for African American Theological Studies, started by Jeremiah Wright and Dr. Yvonne Delk, which gives a seminary without bricks and mortar here in Chicago. So through that, I am a senior at Virginia Union University at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology. I'm looking to graduate with a Master's of Divinity on May 10th of 2014. Wow. So this Hyde Park is my first church. I was assigned a church through the AME church, and so that brings us to today.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful history, a wonderful journey. I thank you for taking time with us. I know you've heard about the Syria situation and President Obama, having issues with what they've done with the chemical weapons and all of this. And many people are saying, oh, how dare you go to Syria and worry about their issues when we've got our own stuff going on here. I take stance with President Obama. I totally agree with him, but I want to know what you think. How do you feel about America intervening in third world country affairs? Are we helping or are we hurting?
Well, in the Bible, Jesus says that when you do unto the least of them, you do unto me. So I think from a individual standpoint, from a collective standpoint, from a community standpoint, and from a global standpoint, I think it's our obligation to get involved in other countries. But the question is, how do we choose? I mean, there are so many other countries where atrocities are happening, especially in the continent of Africa. And for us to say getting involved in Syria, would be more important than getting involved in Rwanda or any other of those countries, that's where I think we draw the question. And for us as a community, it's important that we get involved, because if we decided, the president was getting pressure from Congress long before this to get involved in Syria. And for him to make the decision to even bomb them, he decided to put it out to the country. He decided to say, I want to let the Senate and Congress make the decision.
Very positive, intelligent move.
Exactly. So that puts it, and when we look at it, we're thinking that he's putting it back into government, but actually he's putting it back in the hands of the people. Because it's up to us to go to our local or our government officials and say, yes, we agree with the president, or we disagree, and they should base their decisions based off of what their constituents are requesting. And so that says that yes, we can get involved, but as in black community, I think we should be more educated on some of the worldviews in order to ensure that our elected officials are looking out for our best interest. So, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Jamaica, whether it's in Haiti, which affects us,
Right.
We need to make a stand. And so, to answer your question, yes, I think we should get involved. But along with that, I think as a community, we need to make decisions or insist that our government officials look out for the interests of the countries that we feel need the most help.
Yeah, that's a respectable opinion, and it's fair. I mean, America is a wonderful, prosperous country.
It's a superpower.
Yeah, and we don't want that to ever change. But we have to understand. I think American people have to understand. If we let third world countries out there just get big with their attacks, with chemical warfare and all this other stuff,
nuclear.
What makes you think that if they're successful at taking over a smaller country, that they won't come for us?
And if they decided that they wanted to get allies in other small third world countries, and all of them are accumulating weapons of mass destruction,
Exactly. And
then they've become equally. They couldn't get as big, but they can make themselves a force in the world and taking out other smaller countries.
Exactly. So we don't want that to happen. And it's not to say we're the big boss of the world, but I mean, I can understand everyone's issue with the whole thing. But hey, we got to look out for all the possible attacks.
And I think that's why it's important that, and what the president is doing, especially this week, is speaking out to the United Nations and using his Chicago politics acumen to affect those that are marginalized in the world.
Yes, I appreciate it. Okay, another thing that's really out there now, in certain communities where there's not a lot of resources, and by resources I mean money, I mean the schools are poor, the churches are poor, the hoods are poor, the whole place is just poor. So in a situation like that, when you have children that are growing up in these communities, if you're poor like that, how do you develop a healthy self-esteem when everyone around you is telling you you're worthless and a peasant in society?
But that's, for us in America, that's a very hard question. It's a very important question, but it's hard because, and I'll talk about who I know, my own experiences. When I say experiences, I mean my own ancestry, African Americans. This country has oppressed us and marginalized us, and I'm not saying that we don't have opportunities, but we came to this country being thought of as less than a human. Even though they put in their constitutions that all men are created equal, the country did not exhibit that in their treatment of African Americans. And so when you are being historically oppressed, when historically you're told and you're made to think that you are not the same as someone else, yet you're taught in history or in your history class that the Constitution says this, yet you go further in history and see that there is a segment of people who are being treated differently, who are being treated worse than others. That makes it hard. And especially when it's systematic oppression, meaning lack of jobs, lack of equal education. How do you tell someone, well, you're better than that, even though this country doesn't give you the same resources as someone in the same city, in the same state, that may live in a different area. It's hard. But to me, I think that's where the church comes in. I think that the question lies as in this particular community that we're in, the West Pullman community, even around this church. We're a small church, but yet there are 12 other churches within a 3 or 4 block radius. So that's a place where anyone can come who is told that they're less than anybody else. And be in an environment with like minds and like thoughts and like hearts that are giving messages of hope, showing you different. The Bible says this. You are wonderfully made. And teaching them that despite what you're being told by man, This is what God thinks about you.
This is the higher power.
And that provides a message of hope. Now also, systematically, and programs can be made through the church in order to offer hope in the community, because you can probably teach and learn more black history within the church than it's being taught in the schools. Because in the school, they're not teaching you everything. They're glossing over the hangings, the beatings, the killings.
This is true.
You know, the atrocities that have happened to Africans in America. You know, how America was not the first to actually get involved in slavery, but that the slavery in America was the most heinous, that they treated their slaves worse historically than any other country.
I understand. Yeah, that's a very important point. And thank God for the churches that are in the community. You know, someone has to care. Someone has to, you know, speak to people who are in situations like that. I mean, it's so easy to feel no one cares, no one wants to help, you know. So why not rob, kill, steal? Why not just lay down and die even, or, you know, whatever it is they do. But, you know,
and it's you know, it's, you know, you can blame them and it's wrong. But when you're put in a position where it's a matter of survival, I gotta feed my kids.
Right.
You know, I gotta do what I gotta do to bring money into my home. You know, because the system is working against me. Because the system is making it so if I do one thing, if I have, you know, a few vials of crack cocaine, then I'm going to jail for a length amount of time. Yet in another community, when you have cocaine, you get a slap on the wrist.
yeah, oh, don't be doing that.
Right, it's a
Well,
slap on
you
the
didn't
wrist.
know that was legal. Now you know. Don't do that again.
So to go back to your question, and then even go back to another question, the system is making people feel that way, and so therefore the answer is incumbent on the community to change the system,
I appreciate that.
to get together and reverse that, or get government to change the way that they treat Americans.
Yes.
But until we come together as a community to do so, like if you think about the civil rights movement, if you look at anything in the historic pictures and where they met and where the civil rights organizations came from, they came out of the church. They came out of the black church.
Right. This is true. This is true.
And so where's the black church now when they're closing our schools, when we have an issue with literacy?
Right.
You know, we need to come together and at the church and provide those vehicles, those systems, and those messages of hope to let people know that you're better than society is telling that you are.
And
because you are.
That's a perfect message. That's a perfect message. Okay, well, I think that does it for this segment. That's all for RazzmatazzTV.com, Spiritually Intriguing, the Church Edition. We'll see you next time.